to this day, it's the long game. We take the clients that need me on a one-time basis. By all means, they're as much a client as anybody. But when I'm constantly attempting to establish relationships that I expect to be long-term relationships.
Welcome to Beyond the Blueprint, powered by Contractors, Closers, and Connections, Orlando. Join me for in-depth interviews with some of the top commercial real estate and development executives in the industry. We uncover their success stories, their strategies, and their lessons learned along the way. Gain valuable insight whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. Beyond the Blueprint, we are sitting down with Ed Storey from Storey Law Firm. Is that
Storey Law Group?
Storey Law Group.
Good morning.
We have the pleasure to sit down with Ed, who I've known for a while through some of my relationships and mentors here in town. And so I want to get you started with just a quick introduction. What's your name and what you're about?
Sure. My name is Ed Storey. I'm the founder and managing partner of Storey Law Group, PA. We're kind of a mid-size law firm here in Orlando. We specialize mostly in real estate matters, both commercial and residential. That covers a large gamut, everything from purchase and sale transaction, leasing transactions, elements of construction law, et cetera. We also have components of corporate law, corporate formation, corporate governance, kind of like asset purchase agreements, purchase sale agreements. And then we also have a litigation department that largely focuses on lender representation, foreclosure type of matters, and general breach of contract. So we kind of cover a large gamut of things, but we try to stay focused in real estate and real estate-oriented aspects of the law.
Type deals, yeah. So, you guys are real specialized. And so I want to go back to your origin story and the kind of how you got so specialized. Some people, they focus on a generality and then they kind of narrow it down.
Sure.
But I know because you guys are so specialized, I'm sure there's background. So we'll go back as far as you want to go back and go from there.
Yeah, origins. Well, I mean, just to give you about me, I was born in South Carolina, small town, Conway, South Carolina, which is just outside of Myrtle Beach. My dad was in construction. He graduated from Citadel, got an engineering degree out of UVA. And so, my early youth, we were bouncing around from kind of high growth developments in South Carolina, Hilton Head, Fripp Island, Beaufort, et cetera. And then ultimately moved down to Florida and he got a job at Trammell Crow. And we relocated to Orlando, and that's kind of been home ever since. Yeah. So it's I would say it started early a little bit, being around development, being around construction, and being around my father who had people in that industry.
Sure.
It probably was just kind of ingrained in me that it was a successful place to be. It had a lot of opportunity, and there was some familiarity on my end. So that's probably where at least the real estate component of how it got specialized. And why I went down that path.
Was it purely the opportunity, or was it like, hey, you like something about real estate?
No, I mean, and once again, my dad was in construction, so and I worked at his practice during summers in all aspects. I was in the estimating department for a little while. I was in the accounting department for a little while. I was a laborer for a little while. So I got to see all the things. And once again, I think it was really a lot of it was meeting the people, watching things get built, watching the transactions occur, and seeing people, gain financial benefits from that. So once again, I think it's familiarity and seeing success and saying, okay, I can see that, I can do that, and I want to be part of it.
Right. Like this is a good industry.
Yeah.
Kind of get into.
That's it. Construction, I learned on that I didn't want to be in. That's a tough biz, and my dad was a good guy, but also a tough guy. And so he handled that well. I was more into relationship building. I was more into creating transactions and working out deals and whatnot. That was kind of more my personality. So I didn't want to go into construction.
You didn't want to swing hammers.
No, that was not me and hammers don't get along. So but I think I wanted to be in the industry, just not specifically the construction aspect.
So as you got to Orlando, what made you pursue law school and go from there?
I'm not exactly sure, but I always had an affinity for it. So high school here at Winter Park High, I was on the debate team all 4 years. I was actually kind of a nerdy kid that did some of the young future attorney type of organizations and whatnot. So for whatever reason, I was drawn to it, the law, the legal profession. my parents didn't understand it. I can't say they were hugest fans of attorneys and whatnot, but they saw that I liked it, and so they allowed me to kind of pursue that. Once I graduated, went to undergrad.
Where'd you go to undergrad?
Furman University, okay. Which, by the way, quick shout out to the Furman Paladins for their run in the NCAA tournament. So that was pretty awesome. I ended up majoring in business administration, kind of general, but at the end of my undergraduate career, took a few business law courses and whatnot, and it kind of reignited that. And once again, it reminded me that I like that stuff. Yeah. I enjoy it. I got interested in it. And I also met my future wife, who also was thinking about going to law school, so that made it easy for us. We both ended up graduating, going to University of Florida for law school.
So it was like you meet her and you're like, hey, we're going to do this together.
Well, a little. I mean, I was a year in front of her, but she had said that was one of her potential goals, and it's definitely one of mine. So, we a little bit of kismet there that we both were interested in that field, but it probably did perpetuate my desire. Sure. It probably pushed me even further to kind of pursue it.
Sure. So you go to law school, and then what happens after you get out of law school?
Luckily did well in law school, and got a good prestigious job here at Foley & Lardner, which is a kind of larger national law firm. They have an Orlando branch. So got a job there, was originally placed in the corporate and finance department, but I told them early on, and they understood that my goal was to be in the real estate division of it. So after a year, when an opening kind of came up, they pushed me over to the real estate department, and then I grew from there. Stayed there for a few years before deciding to go out on my own. Me and a friend and business partner, we started our own law firm. Did that for several years until ultimately we ended up splitting in 2013, and ever since then I've had my firm in practice.
So what made you leave big corporate America and then say, hey, I'm gonna do my own deal?
There wasn't one particular factor. It was really opportunity. Yeah. This is 2006. You can imagine real estate market at that time, if you know the history of the mid 2000s, was booming.
Yeah. I can get clients for sure.
Oh yeah, that's exactly how it felt. Is that I had opportunity to grow and build my own business. And my dad was an entrepreneur. He had his own, after Trammell Crow, he started his own business, and so it was also ingrained in me to, he kind of said, look, sooner or later you probably want to do something on your own. It's just, so it was also part of my future planning. And so this opportunity came up. The market was hot. I had my friend who was leaving his practice, and we were best buddies. And so it was just an opportunity. And I said, let's go do it. Let's take a risk. Let's plunge. So that's kind of what it was. It was an opportunity and the timing. Sure.
Would you say that you were very entrepreneurial at a younger age, or this was got something that was you've always seen and maybe you were going to do it and then the opportunity came and you just jumped?
I don't know if I was I did a lot of jobs. My history of odd jobs and whatnot, from bartending to car washing and ripping tickets at movie theaters. I've done a lot of stuff. So those weren't particularly entrepreneurial. They were just kind of going through all the different things that you realize you didn't want to do for the rest of your life. Yeah. But no, so I wouldn't say it was ever a history of entrepreneurship. It was more, that was always a goal of mine. And so when an opportunity came to meet that goal, I kind of jumped at it.
Yeah. I have an interesting experience. When I was in college during the summer, my uncle owned an electrical company, and he would allow us to go work there during the summer, and he'd pay us $12-13 an hour.
Sure.
And he owned the company, and this is a Fortune 500 all over the world company. And he did it with all of my cousins, right? So even his son, and we're like, Uncle, couldn't you get me a little bit better job? And I think that the reality set in as I got older. He was like, I just wanted you to, no, there's nothing against, laborers, you need people for that. But the reality was, I wanted you to have this opportunity so you knew this is not what you wanted to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. Like I said, my dad, end of my high school career, and then every summer thereafter, I would work for him. And he started me out in the field.
Yeah.
I was a laborer. He would build timeshares in apartment complexes, and that was what he did. And so he would put me out there, and he put me out there.
Yeah.
And so summer, Orlando, middle of nowhere, doing, go behind the washer and do connections, move that pile of dirt to the other. It didn't take me long. to realize that this is a difficult way to make a living. And I think that was intentional on his behalf. And then after 2 years of that, that's when he brought me inside and said, here's their air conditioning. Here's our accountant, and, sit behind her and kind of learn what she does and see if this is more interesting to you.
Right.
So
you're like fiending for that. You're like,
that was it. The pay wasn't terribly different, but it was definitely different shirts and less tiredness at the end of the day. So it was good kind of progression. Yeah.
So let's go to starting the firm, right? So what does that look like? Obviously 2006, there's a ton of opportunity, clients are kind of rolling in. You probably had some connections and some relationships. So just from the start of that to building it until 2013, what does that look like?
So 2006, like you said, there was a lot of opportunity. Mm-hmm. I will say that my business partner, he already had a pretty good set base of clients. And so that in large part was also him and wanting to work with him and knowing that he had a set base that we could rely upon while I grew my business. Sure. I had a set of clients, but I also needed to grow. And so we went into that with that kind of base. I took a lot of kind of the managerial roles and whatnot of the office while I built. And then as I built, we filled in those positions with others. It wasn't smooth. If you also recall the end of the 2000s, the crash that came of it really put a dent in all my plans a little bit. It was definitely a challenging time. It was also a rewarding time in the sense that it really forced me to get out of my comfort zone, kind of reinvent myself a little bit, and really focus on, what I want to do and how I want to do it, and can we be successful at it? So that took a little bit, and then I got lucky. An opportunity came up. Once again, it was in real estate, but it was more, at the time it was kind of more foreclosure based, and a lot of that type of legal work was out there. And I had a client that came to me and gave me some work, and then that client got a job at a large servicer, and then all of a sudden the amount of work that came in was not drips and drabs; it was a flood. Yeah. And so we grew very quickly at that time to kind of meet the demand. And once again, I still have my real estate practice. I was doing it, but I had this whole division now that was coming that I never saw. But once again, an opportunity came. I happened to be at the right place, right time, and jumped at it, and it ended up being a great thing for the firm.
Yeah. So going back now 10 years ago, you split off from that partnership in 2013, and then you move into what is now Storey Law Group.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it wasn't any particular reason. It's just partnerships sometimes don't work out the way that you intend. That happened to be about the same time as I met my bigger client, and so the timing worked out well that way. And we just had different thoughts on how to kind of grow the business. But yeah, so that we ended up splitting. I ended up moving over once again, and I now had this new focus and this new thing, and my job became managing a company, at a larger company at that time. Mm-hmm. And it just became different and whatnot. But it was a great experience and still is. So we've been lucky that as times have changed, we were just able to kind of continue on, and we have our client base and ebbs and flows of certain types of work, but we haven't had a shortage ever since.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it was very organic. Your career path has been very organic.
Agreed. There was a lot of intention to who I was meeting, when I was meeting, whatnot, but it was very much from those relationships and from that it grew from there. It wasn't, anything specific, but I think it was putting ourselves at the right place at the right time. And then once again, having the opportunity and the ability to pursue opportunities as they arose.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today. So let's go to like that strategy, right? And like finding those relationships and those key people that can, elevate your career. And even it could be 10 years from now. What would you say was like one of the strategies that you looked at whenever evaluating that potential relationship?
Well, first off, I'm from here, and so that helped out a ton. Winter Park's a great area because a lot of people come back. And so when I got my job, I had an already preset group of friends and acquaintances. My father was in the industry, so I had some group there. But, the intention was, first off, early on exposure. I joined a number of organizations. Some of them worked and some of them failed. And in terms of what I was trying to get accomplished, I didn't know exactly what I needed, where I needed it. I just know that I needed exposure to all of it. And then as I joined those organizations, I would realize, okay, this is beneficial to me. This is meeting my goals. This is what I'm trying to get accomplished, or it's not. And then I would, move on from those organizations. So it was a lot of exposure at the end, but I already had some preset knowledge of the industry and some of the players in there, and luckily some access to them. So I focused on those. I focused on making sure that they knew I was here for them. In the legal field, especially working at a large law firm, the reality is we're pretty expensive. Yeah. And so especially the up-and-comers, the ones that I knew had it in them and that I felt confident they were going to grow, I really made sure to make myself available to them. Hey, look, man, like if you need a question answered, if you're looking for some help to get something done, if there's something I can do to help you get to the next level, don't be shy.
Right.
And so there was a lot of extra work and extra time developing these people on my own because I had faith in them. And then it ended up that they ended up when I needed them, and when I started my own, they had faith in me.
Right. Well, it's playing the long game in that relationship.
It was always to this day, it's the long game. We take the clients that need me on a one-time basis. By all means, they're as much a client as anybody. But when I'm constantly attempting to establish relationships that I expect to be long-term relationships.
Yeah. And so how does that change your viewpoint? I think, especially in this industry, relationships are really key. You've got to have them. But I think that, I tell people all the time, like, you can't have a conditional relationship, right? It can't be one-sided. And so it seems like you realized that early on was like, hey, I'm going to provide as much value as I can. I'm going to answer the phone when this person needs me. If he's got any questions, although I might not be billing by the hour for that one question, but it's a long-term play.
Right. And it builds trust.
Yeah.
It builds, like you said, you can't be one-sided. Some industries are better about being able to refer work than others. Mm-hmm. That's a reality. And so you've got to figure out where you can provide value, not just for things as they come in, but like constantly. And I've always prided myself on being available and being prompt to respond to things. Sometimes it's a longer question, sometimes a shorter question. It doesn't matter. I at least try to if I can't give you the answer, or if I can't do it, I try to at least point you in the right direction. So Here's where you can go. Here's the resource. Here's other people that are available. And so the thought process was always that relationships are two-way. There's always got to be a reason that you're providing value to the other person. Because if you're not, sooner or later somebody else will.
Right.
As well as if you're expecting value from somebody and not reciprocating. I mean, you're doing everybody a disservice there.
And it's sniffed out really quick. People know whenever you're just taking.
We're not in an industry of idiots.
Yeah.
We are in an industry of pretty sophisticated people that have access to professionals on a consistent basis. They are exposed to them during their transactions to both. You're representing somebody, but there's another side, and they're seeing that, and they're seeing what's happening, and they're getting feedback from the people on the other side. If it's timely, I mean, you've been on the other side. Hey, like, man, my attorney hasn't got back to me in 6 days. I mean, those comments result in me getting a phone call.
Right.
2 weeks later. Hey, I was on the other side of you. I heard good things. I saw that you were being attentive. I got another transaction. I didn't feel I was being attended to like the way I thought I needed to. Would you be willing to assist? That's how you that's been my marketing as much as anything, is trying to establish that type of reputation.
Right. Well, and it kind of goes to stewardship, right?
Of course.
It's like, hey, how you steward that one relationship, that one transaction. There's a saying is how you do something is how you do everything, right?
Yes.
And I think as long as you keep that in mind, it's important, whether how small or how big it is,
Mm.
It is reciprocated, and people do notice that.
Mm.
My dad always told me character is what you do when people aren't looking, right? And it's like, even if you're doing a deal or, you're talking to a client, I mean, if our attorney, if I'm on one side of the deal and their attorney is like, hey, it's going to be this amount of time. It's like, well, time is very valuable in this industry. And so, especially from a legal perspective, there's a lot, I mean, time can kill deals.
Oh.
Right?
Oh, time is the silence and time. Those are the things that do the most damage.
Yeah. So would you say that you had anybody in your life, like a mentor, someone that you looked up to as you were growing? And you may have had multiple, you may have one, guy or girl that kind of helped you structure into what you are today.
Well, obviously, I keep going back to my parents. My mom ran my dad's company.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was the GC. He was the point man. He was the one that did the nuts and bolts. But my mom was also working in the office every day, and she ran the ship. So I had in my house mentors.
Yeah.
Every day, not just from a parental side, but also from business. They would come home and they would have those discussions, and I would be privy to those discussions. So I would hear early on how these situations arose, how they were handling things. And they did that for, a decade plus. So, I was exposed to a lot of different situations and a lot of different, aspects of and strategies of how to address a situation as they arose. So, I mean, it's a little cliche-ish, but my parents really intentionally or unintentionally prepared me for a lot of the things that go with those things. And then when I was at Foley and Lardner, it was a very good firm with some really good people there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from the partners down. I've got really good attention, a lot of good mentorship. I don't think there was too many people that I could say that didn't help me if I needed it.
Yeah.
I had, my partners were Paul Rosenthal and Terry Delahunty at kind of were my main people. Paul in particular had a way about him that was very meticulous and very thoughtful, that I got a lot of information from. That I had a guy named Michael O'Cady, who was, when I was in the corporate finance departments in particular, he was only a couple of years older than me, but he took me under his wing, and he was just very giving with his time, and once again, one of the smarter people that I was lucky enough to be around and learn from. So I was given a lot of opportunity, both from my house and from my opportunities at the law firm.
Would you say that some of those relationships, specifically, I guess, at the law firm, kind of shaped you and how you wanted to deal with clients later on, how you wanted to handle business?
Absolutely. Once again, when you're dealing with a larger place, you get to see a lot of different personalities. Yeah. And just in the people I've mentioned, how they went about their business, one was much more focused on being out there and being present and being exposed. And the other was much more, I'm going to do good work for you and you're never going to leave me because my work is just so good. And so I got to see, the give and take of those different approaches. And then I got to take the parts that I thought with my personality, with my skill set, was the best way to kind of pursue those and specialize in how I present to myself.
What would you say to younger professionals that are kind of in the early stages of their career, that are looking for a guide, and how to kind of strategically look those out and what they can and can't do, what they should look for and what they shouldn't look for in whether it's a leader or even an employer standpoint, but specifically more of a mentor, more of someone who's kind of ahead of you in your career path, and trying to get to where you want to go?
Well, I think once you figure out who you're trying to emulate yourself to be, obviously, in my situation, I got a job at a large, and so I was given a lot of opportunity to kind of pick and choose who I got to be around. As long as they made themselves available, then I was able to do that. But then outside of that, there were people that I said, well, I know that person's influential in the industry, or I see them as an up and comer in the industry, and I see that they have skill sets that I don't have,
Mm-hmm.
where they have contacts that I don't have. And so there's two aspects of it. I think one, you really need to find somebody that you align with, kind of professionally and frankly, whether it be your faith or your foundational matters, whether or not you actually connect at a higher level than just professional. Because I think those people you're going to just naturally attract, and you're going to naturally gravitate to what they do and see what they do and kind of take pieces of it. I would say what I struggled with is I went for some people that didn't make themselves available. And once again, they had no obligation to do so. I was trying to make it, hey, I see what you do. I see who you are, and I really like to spend time with you. And they were nice enough to make a call back and whatnot. But there were people that really went out of their way to spend time with me, that they thought it was their mission and their importance to not just do their job, but actually provide mentorship.
Right.
If you can find that guy,
right,
you will, it's just so much more valuable than a person that you can throw out a name, but if they actually didn't, they're not willing to invest in you.
Right.
Then, you take what you can and you try to give back to them as well, so that, it's not all one-sided, like you said, but if somebody really has the passion to be a mentor and to be willing to be connected to you and watch you and take pride in your growth, that's who you should latch on to. That's who you should really appreciate and try to seek out. Yeah.
I think there's, oftentimes there's people that are natural teachers and natural mentors, and some people it's a little bit out of their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But I would agree that aligning, especially, whether it's your faith or morally or your ethics, I think that's the foundation of that relationship, because I do believe that creates that longevity. Oftentimes, you can go and try to search out some multi-millionaire who's successful in your industry. If y'all don't align, then there's going to be a lot of rub later on.
Yeah. So there, as we're going through the data banks of people that I know and who influenced me, one of the guys that I grew up with, so it helped. They saw me grow up, and they were on my, they were coaching my baseball team and all that other stuff. He wasn't in the legal profession.
Yeah.
Dale he was the air conditioning guy, but he owned his own air conditioning company. But he was so invested in me for whatever reason, whatever he thought. One, he was very faith-based. Mm-hmm. And so I've definitely, a lot of my mentors have come through the church or come through religious organizations. But he in particular was a very faithful person, and so I think that's part of finding that person that does believe that that's part of his obligation, right, to help grow and teach. And he was good at it, and he was funny, and he made you feel important.
Right.
And when you feel important, it grows your confidence and just every other aspect of what you do. And so not all of it has to be, because they're the right contacts. Sometimes it just has to be the right person, because those skills are universal regardless of industry.
Well, and I think it doesn't have to be specifically in the industry that you want. You're an attorney, and he was doing an air conditioning company, right? Because I think oftentimes those mentorship relationships are about building you as a person.
Absolutely. Well, and he owned his own business, so there was, once again, that skill set and it was a successful one. So credit to him. Like you said, they are universal skills. That didn't help me learn about real estate law very much, but it did help me to manage people, manage my expectations, create goals and expectations and plans. He would just little nuggets of knowledge intermixed with some faith-based teaching and whatnot. Those
some
are
jokes.
The things. Yeah. It's how things, just certain things stick with you and other things just kind of go in one ear out the other. There are certain people that, and when they do that, there's just more of those nuggets of them that stay in your head than others. And I have those from him in particular, but others as well. And so, once again, for me, those probably been the most meaningful relationships, the one that felt it was important to invest in me as well.
Yeah. I think it's important to seek out those. I think we're humans built for relationship, built for community. It is not our job to do this life alone. It's not our job to find a career and only do it by yourself. You can't do it by yourself. There's no way, no matter what you choose. you always will need people. You always will need relationships. So I think it is important, especially for the younger generations, to learn like, hey, you need people, and then like, here's what you can and can't do when developing those relationships. Create value, bring value to, to allow that reciprocity to happen within that relationship, but also be eager to learn. There's a great book called Think Again, right? It's understanding what you don't know, slow down enough to think again, to process what you don't know, and learn from someone else, whether they're in your industry or not.
Right.
So that's really, really valuable. So I appreciate you sharing that origin story.
That's good.
We are going to jump into episode 2 at Beyond the Blueprint. Stay tuned for more. Sitting down with Ed Storey at Storey Law Group.